Hello and welcome to the Target Transfers Show. Thank you for joining us for another episode. I'm joined here with Molly as usual.
Hello.
Molly. And today we're going to be talking about common mistakes that heat printers make and how you can make some efficiency improvements to get more out of your heat printer business.
This is the last episode of season 1 as well.
Yeah.
So for everyone who's tuned in from the beginning, thank you very much and well done for making it to the 6th episode. And for those of you that have just joined us, go back and listen to the rest because they're very good. Okay, what's the first common mistake?
So there's lots of little mistakes that people can make, but none of them are massive and they can all be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it comes down to sort of going against the rules of heat printing, really. Everything we do is recipe-based. We always like to say it's recipe-based. What we mean by that is every single product that we offer has a particular time, temperature, and pressure to it when you're applying it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've never used a heat press before, it has a giant top heated batten that comes down with pressure and applies either heat transfer vinyl, heat transfers, do sublimation with it. You could cure DTG printing with it. So lots and lots of things you can do with it. But every single one of those products has a very specific application temperature and time to it. So when we are manufacturing the products, be it the vinyl or heat transfers, we use particular adhesives in a lot of the transfers of vinyl that essentially get unlocked at a certain temperature. And that's what so when we talk about recipes, we mean it's like cooking. You follow the recipe.
You're cooking the transfer with a heat press, essentially.
But it's more along the lines of, say, cooking a chicken, where you don't want to go off recipe when it comes to actually the cooking time, the temperature time, because I always say to customers that come in, you wouldn't cook a chicken at 200 degrees for 10 minutes and expect to have a nice chicken. It's going to be raw. It's going to be burnt on the outside, raw on the inside. It's the same for heat printing.
Very good metaphor. I like that.
Yeah, same for heat printing. So going off recipe is a mistake that a lot of people make, mostly trying to get too quick with it.
Speed and
so say for instance, one of our ultra color heat transfers, it's 120 degrees for 12 seconds.
So it's a low temperature
and a
really quick fusion time.
It is quick fusion. I mean, 12 seconds is...
How can you get quicker than that?
You can't with heat transfers, but a lot of people want to do it for 10 seconds or 8 seconds because they've got a mound of work they want to get through and they think, oh yeah, I'll just do it. I'll just put the heat up a little bit
Save a few seconds.
It saves a few seconds, but it doesn't help you. You're just going to end up with bad results. So it's not very, like you say, it's not long at all anyway. So, just do it for the correct amount of time. And if you follow the recipe every single time, you're not going to get stuck that way.
No.
And if you've got a good heat press, you're going to be fine because it can give you the control over that anyway. So you don't have to worry about too much on that.
Brilliant.
So, do you want to take the next one?
Yes, no, that's fine. So the next one that we're going to talk about is over-pressurizing. So a lot of people will, whether they realise they're doing it or not, I'm not sure. Some people, I think, maybe just don't realise how light the presses need to be pulled down. I think a lot of people think you need to really push them in, and that isn't the case. Is it 2 or 3 fingers you should be able
two fingers really light
to pull your heat press platen down with. If this pressure is more than it should be on the press, then that can lead to damaging the transfer. What's the technicality behind that? Is it that the ink spreads more when it's fused?
It's not so much that. I guess the worst thing is you're going to crush a t-shirt.
Right.
So you're going to have that horrible, what we call a press box or bruise box around where the platen meets. So sometimes that square won't leave the t-shirt. So
you've ruined the t-shirt.
You hand that t-shirt to a customer and it's got a lovely transfer with a box around it. They'll be like, that doesn't look good, especially if it's like a dark garment when it's really noticeable.
And you can't get rid of it.
No, they can ask for a refund on that.
Yeah. So for pressure readout on heat presses, majority of the Hotronix heat presses have digital pressure readout. The only press that doesn't is the Max Clam. But they all have adjustable pressure knobs on the top, and you just twist it a half turn either way to adjust the pressure. Even with the Max Clam, if you have one, even though it doesn't have the digital pressure readout, you can still gauge the pressure by how light or heavy it is to pull down. Like we said, 2 fingers before, and then that's roughly medium pressure for your transfer. And I'm sure you'll notice if there's a box mark on your t-shirt as well. But yes, so the Auto, the Fusion, and both of the Airs have the digital pressure readout. And the Air Fusions are my favourite because the air controls the pressure on those, so you don't even have to worry about adjusting it.
The thing to bear in mind is that Hotronics machines are built to work all day. So we have lots of customers that have the machines, but their factories are working 24 hours a day. So it could be 3 shifts across every single heat press.
Yeah.
So that means that the heat press has got to last and last and last. So if someone's having to yank that down every single time and put too much pressure on it, you can know that person's going to get repetitive strain anyway. But also you'll be like, well, this product isn't any good because it's so much hard work. So we make all our machines with precision engineering so that the machine does all the hard work for you. So that's why the Hotronics machines have the over center adjustment. So when it comes down perfectly through the middle of the press because it's been built to do so. So you don't have to do any work, or like say with the Air Fusions, you literally just press 2 buttons that does it all for you. Exactly. Really nice and easy.
Yes.
Which takes us on to another one, a common mistake. And it kind of comes back to going off recipe, really, is just rushing through your stuff, not paying attention. If you keep to the recipe again, you're going to always get it right. If you rush, don't pay attention. There's only 3 things you need to pay attention to, which is time, temperature, and pressure. And I guess making sure you pre-pressured your garments.
Yeah, and the peeling as well. I know Ultramax is hot, but obviously with screen and standard Ultra is cold. And if you peel that too soon or leave it too long, that can damage the transfer as well. So
and a lot of the mistakes you won't notice at the time as well. So things like if you are rushing through it and you're like, I haven't got time to pre-press all my garments, you might not find out until a customer's washed it a couple of times, and then the vinyl might come off because you've not followed the recipe properly.
That's probably the most common answer I get when I get asked, what is the point in pre-pressing? Oh, it works fine when I do it like this. The big one we've had as well is handheld presses and irons. People asking if they can use those to apply them, of which we technically it will stick, but the longevity of it and the quality of the application isn't the same. And then the response is, oh, well, that it works fine when I do it. And you think, well, it might look okay and it might go down, but give it 6 months or a year of a customer washing it, they're not going to come back to you and say, oh, it's faded. They just won't buy again. So that's hindering your business without you even realising, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So clamshell heat presses all the way. So the next one, this leads us nicely into the cheaper heat press machines. So the heat presses, Hotronics heat presses, as you were saying, Andy, have obviously the over center pressure, but the heated platen element that runs, it's almost like a snake through the platen, so that there's no cold spots across it at all. We do recommend that you regularly check your heat press platen temperature to make sure that there aren't any cold spots. What's the recommended time for that? Every few months? I suppose it depends on how much you're using.
I guess it depends if you're noticing any problems with your pressing. So with a cheap press, it could be that it goes after a week, it goes up, or it could go after a couple of weeks, or it will fluctuate a little bit. So it's always, if you're using a cheap machine, it's always worth checking quite regularly, because, or if you notice your work's coming back to you, it probably means that's one of the problems with it.
Yeah, so there's that. There's also the digital readout that Hotronics has that other presses don't. In particular, the pressure element as well. There's a lot of videos that we've seen of people using other heat presses, and you can tell that you can see the scorch marks straight away as soon as they come off the press. And I don't really think there's anything that you can do about that with the lower level heat presses, really.
No.
So in terms of if you're thinking of starting a business or expanding a business and upgrading a heat press, we would really recommend getting one that is going to grow with you and with your business, even if that's like the Max Clam that has the interchangeable patterns and that has all of the over center pressure features that you need with a heat press. It just means you're not going to run into those problems sort of later on. Is there anything to add on cheaper machines?
I'd say, just on the topic of cold spots, really, if you've never used a heat press before, cold spots, what I mean by that is there's parts of the top platen which are at different degree to the rest of the press. So with a really cheap press, what you tend to find is there's a heating element in the middle, and and it tries to spread a lot of the heat through the rest of the plate on it. But what that means is it might be perfect temperature in the middle of the press, but by the time you get to the outer side, so it's be 10 or 20 degrees lower, or even just reading 20, 30 degrees off entirely for the whole of the press. So we always make sure our machines have no cold spots because of the way we build them. If you really want to kind of get nerdy about heat presses and cold spots, then there's a really good video that Josh Ellsworth did, which you can see on our YouTube channel, which has a comparison between the auto open press and a cheap import press, and he literally cuts them in half so you can see what the insides of the press looks like, or what should look like versus
I love
what
that
shouldn't
video
look like.
so much.
So I'd highly recommend, if you're thinking about getting a new heat press, that's the one to watch because it really breaks it down for what to look for in terms of quality press. Even if you're sort of shopping around, you can kind of quickly and easily see what you should be looking for.
So if you head to our Target transfers at YouTube, which you're either watching the podcast on right now, or it is at target.com, it's the Hotronix versus Import title video. So if you search Hotronix versus Import, you'll be able to find that one on our channel. Yeah.
Another mistake I see a lot of people make, and we touched upon this quite a bit when Darren from Squeezed Orange was here for the other podcast episode, is actually just people just giving up.
Yes.
So one of the things to bear in mind, especially if you're thinking about starting a business, or your printing business, is you've got to be prepared to try and break it. I mean, if you follow the recipe, you shouldn't have to, but it's always worth also not following the recipe on a couple of test items just to see why stuff works like that, to see that we're not just telling you that for the sake of it.
If you want to test the new Ultracolor Max, I did this at Print Run Promotion. We had two machines, one of which was set to Ultracolor Max Temp, one of which was set to Standard Ultra Temp, which for those of you that are unaware, Standard Ultra is fused at 120 degrees and Ultracolor Max is at 145. So I attempted to fuse new Ultracolor Max at 120 degrees. Pre-press, fine. Put the transfer on, fine. Second I went to hot peel it, half of it came off, and that was 15 degrees below the recipe. So not that much of a difference versus 120, 160 for ultra and screen. But it didn't it barely fused to the garment at all. So it just goes to show. So for example, like that, if you lower the temp and up the temp and just see what the difference is for yourselves, I'd recommend having a play with that.
Exactly. So that's the difference a cold spot could make, is it's going to stop you from fusing that properly. And then the not giving up applies a lot to vinyl as well, because vinyl's a little bit trickier, because obviously with transfers we do all the hard work in the manufacturing of the logo or design for you, but with vinyl you've got to put it through the cutter yourself, and you've got to learn how to use it, learn where the limitations of the design are, how much fine detail you can get. And a lot of people give up after doing like a couple of cuts, and I didn't know how I wanted to do, and it's probably just because they tried to push it too much. But it doesn't matter, you can get a lot of detail. You just got to be prepared to spend a couple of hours actually, okay, what can I do? How can I achieve this? One of the things we often tell customers that come in, you've got vinyl cutters and they want to know where the limitations lie, is actually just do yourself alphabet sheets, but do them in sort of going down in font size. So you start at like 18 and then go all the way down to 5, 6, whatever it may be, because that way you cut it in the font you're likely to use, you can see actually, okay, that's too fine. And then at that point, you either order them as transfers, or you stop and say, okay, the maximum font size I'm going to do for a job is 8 or 7. And then you're never going to be disappointed, or you're never going to have to ruin loads of vinyl because you keep messing up by going too thin or too fine with it.
Because you've done all of your testing before.
So that all comes down to not giving up and wanting to be curious about how the machines work and where you can push the limits to. And that's how you end up with higher quality designs and better looking designs, because you've really got to know it in a really intuitive way that way.
Definitely. And I think as well, that's what obviously Darren was saying about putting an hour or two aside and saying, right, I'm going to test these 2-3 meters of vinyl, rather than trying it when you've got a customer's order and it's taking you longer to get their design right because you don't know. It sounds like a lot of taking a couple of hours out of your day to test a product that has recommended settings. But it will save you a lot of time in the long run.
Because there's no way we can know every single font and logo that you're going to try and use. I mean, we'll make it so that it can go really fine.
Some of them are finer than others as well. Obviously, the Premium Plus and Sports Film that have tacky backs and they're a bit more durable, you can do that. Whereas something like, you say, high build that's chunkier, if you try and weave the same amount
Yeah,
of
it just won't
detail with
work.
that, it will just come straight off. So
Yeah.
yes, don't give up on your vinyl, people.
No.
Which leads us nicely into, while we're on the topic of vinyl, blunt blades.
Mhm.
We have a lot of questions around people struggling to cut their vinyl after so long. And one of the first things we always get you to check is how old is your blade? Is it sharp enough? Is it cutting properly? Again, it comes down to how often you use it as to how often you should change it. But if you're using it regularly, then it goes from anything from 3-4 weeks to every few months, really, doesn't it? But always check your blades. Is it really, in terms of testing, is it more when you notice that the lines aren't as sharp, the second you notice something's not 100% with it, you change it over?
You soon start to notice is, obviously, if you try and break at the beginnings, and then you can establish a recipe of your own for cutting and limitations there. As soon as you start to see that actually the vinyl is not coming off the carrier, or the letters are kind of joining in with the excess you're trying to take away, that probably means it's a bit blunt. Or you're starting to notice the shape of the letters are not quite what you expect them to be, and that's often a telltale sign as well. And then at that point, it's just, it's really easy. Just go and get, most vinyl companies like ourselves will offer blade sharpening services for you, so you don't have to buy a new blade every time. You can just get someone to sharpen it for you.
Is there any difference in quality of that, though? Because obviously the blade will get ever so slightly smaller and smaller each time they sharpen it, and they're not massive to start with. So how many?
I couldn't tell you how many times they can get away with being sharpened, but quite a lot of times.
Give it a go.
It's always worth having a spare one anyway, just as best practice. So that way, I don't know, if you're cutting at the weekend and you don't have to wait till Monday to get it sharpened, you've always got one in reserve that way. But yeah, there's lots of options there. So you don't have to keep buying new blades every time. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Cool. And one other common mistake I'd like to touch on before we go as well, which kind of takes us back to going off recipe slightly, but it's the pressure point of people leaving. I know we talk about this all the time, but necks, neck seams, sleeves, zips, anything like that that's on the press platen will really affect the pressure of the press, because if you think about it, there's a raised area above the transfer, so then that plate is being slightly compromised before it can hit the actual transfer. So always making sure that you've got a completely clean, flat surface on your platen, whatever you're fusing on. You can do this with interchangeable lower platens, which all of the Hotronics presses are capable of and have. We have, is it 14 platens now, I believe? I counted them the other day, so there's a lot. Or you can use either a foam pad or heat printing pillows, both of which we have available on our website. So it's not a difficult thing to do, it's just best practice to get into the habit of doing it for, again, quality and longevity purposes of your product and your transfer.
Yeah, exactly. So that's some of the common mistakes. I mean, there's a few others. If you have any questions or you notice something's not quite right, or you want to get help with something, just send us a message on Facebook or Instagram. Leave a comment on this video if it's on YouTube and just say, what about this? Can you help with that? And we're always happy to help. And we've got a customer service team here in Braintree as well that will always welcome your ideas and wants to stop making bad mistakes that way as well. But so obviously we've covered the negative common mistakes, but now I think it's time to cover more positive things, which is how can I be more efficient? How can I make these incremental gains? Which a lot of our most successful customers are coming to us this year, especially since Christmas. There have been so many people that have stopped by for a masterclass here, and all they want to know is how can I be quicker, faster, more accurate, better, because they're starting to get the work coming back in on a high volume, and they want to get through it quicker without making mistakes.
Yeah.
And there's so many different things you can do to make efficiency improvements and say 5-10 seconds here. But once you add them all together, you're looking at saving days or even weeks of the year without doing anything to compromise the design or the actual application process. So we're just going to spend the second half of this episode just talking about little things you can do to help you. So the first one, again, it's the last time I'm going to mention it today, but it's just follow the recipe.
I don't believe you, Andy.
So many people, when they come in and ask them how they apply their products and what they do with the process, and they tell me, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. because they're over-engineering the problem. I think it's partly because there's some really cheap transfers and buying out there, and you have to compromise your process of actually applying them. So a common mistake we find people making in terms of going off recipe is actually doing second application.
Which you do not need to do.
So for instance, I had a large athletics company come in, UK-based one, and they were pre-pressing for 10 seconds. Then they were pressing a transfer for 10 seconds, which that part was correct. And they were pressing again for another 10 seconds once they peeled the transfer.
So they're doubling their application time.
Yeah.
For no gain whatsoever.
No gain. So, and this was a large company. And what had happened was that where they'd inherited a print shop and machines from someone else who'd either moved on or retired, and that was their recipe. That was what they'd been told to do. So even though we were sending a recipe sheet out every single time, saying this is how you apply the transfers, they weren't paying attention. They were just fine. This is what we've always done. This is the way we do it.
Were they changing the time and temperature of our transfer as well, or just having a second?
Just the process, yeah. So
right,
the temperature was fine. So it was going down at 160 degrees because it's one of our screen transfers. But when we had a look at it, it was actually just 5 seconds is ample time for a pre-press. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. 10 seconds for the transfer, which is fine, and then that's it. Put it to the side and peel it cold. But the second application of 10 seconds doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's not going to make the transfer last longer because we've already made sure it lasts longer. This company, they're using tens of thousands, if not more, garments a year. And they could be fusing multiple times in each garment, and they're spending 30 seconds each time when they should be spending 15 seconds. So straight away, just by going back and looking at the process and then following the recipe correctly, they've saved themselves a lot of time that way. They've cut their production time down in half.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine what you'd do if you had half your time back, you could either get double the amount of orders, you could do R&D on new products, you can spend more time doing sales and marketing for your business, growing it that way. So everything we do, like again, last mention is just follow the recipe and you'll be absolutely fine. Don't need to do second hits on high quality products.
Brilliant. We have already mentioned the interchangeable patterns as well, but we'll just touch back on it as well because I want to talk about the tag-along pattern as we're talking about being efficient. So those of you that haven't heard of or seen the tag-along pattern yet, it's a new pattern brought out by Hotronics this year?
End of last year,
where you can apply a full front design, full front transfer, and your tagless neck label in the back of your garment at the same time. So you just thread your t-shirt on, pull the neck label through, and you hit them both at once. So again, cutting time in half in terms of fusing the transfers, but also swapping the patterns over, waiting for them to cool if necessary. That's doubled. So really, really good and efficient pattern to consider, especially if you are branding your t-shirts with either your own branding or your customers' branding. They are available on our website and they fit all of the 40 by 50 centimetre heat presses. They won't work with the smaller ones purely because the pattern is 40 by 50, so you need that top plate for it to come down and hit both. But yes, there is plenty of information and some demonstration videos online as well if you want to see more about that, or book on for a one-to-one class and come and try it for yourself because you have one over there.
Yeah, and like Molly said earlier, there's 14 different patterns, so there's something for every single type. So if you're doing left chest, full front, juniors versus adults.
That's a big one.
Yeah, because you want something like a hoodie with lots of pockets on the front, zips. It just means you can isolate that area. You'd be more accurate that way.
Which comes back to pressure.
Yeah, and it's quicker to get the top on and off the press as well, which, again, save you seconds here and there, which will all add up over the course of the year.
I think I forget sometimes because when we do it, we use the big designs because they just look brilliant. But a lot of, if you are doing like children's wear and things like that, you don't necessarily want the massive plaiting because it either stretch the shirt or have the seams on and things like that. So, yes.
And something you can get for every single pattern, which is a must-have because there's It makes life so much easier, but two, because they're so cheap to buy anyway. But we always recommend putting a quick slip protector on your platen. So this is it's just like a Teflon sheet of sorts, but we call it a quick slip because it means you can quickly slip your t-shirt on and off the platen. And we have these for every single size of platen, but it saves you so much time. They're about between 40 and 50 pounds. But again, you can save about 5-10 seconds every single time you put a t-shirt or hoodie on to platen. So, next time you go to Preston, especially if it's like a large shirt and it's going onto your platen, then you often have to like pull it, work the t-shirt way up the bottom platen to get it into place. And it could take you 10-20 seconds each single time. You put a quick slip on. It's got a nice soft surface. The t-shirt just slides on and off. You can manipulate it around the platen.
Slips on and off.
Slips on and off. You can position it really easily. And it'll probably save your actual placement time by half. So again, you could cut another element of your production time down by half. So we're probably up to like 3 weeks of time saving at this point when you factor in following the recipe correctly and putting a quick slip on.
Yeah. Also, in terms of putting your shirt onto the platen, we obviously notice a lot of stretching of the garments when you don't use the quick slips as well, because not only does it take you longer and it's more difficult to put them on or load them on, it pulls the rough surface, not rough surface, but what would you describe the top of the platen? It's like a foam, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a foam one, but it's because the most efficient way to make it best is to make it with square edges. So it means that if you've got like a nylon or a material that's a bit more delicate that could snag on a corner, you can take the soft edge off. You can make a soft edge on it there. So it just...
And if you pull the t-shirt, that will then stretch it, which will then damage your own product. So if you're, again, rushing with it and you don't have a quick slip, it just speeds everything up and it just makes sure that it eliminates all of those problems for you.
Yeah.
And it protects your platen for longer, which for the sake of, like Andy said, 40 to 50 pounds is a no-brainer really, because of the dye or fluff excess from the product, the t-shirt, anything, not that anything would come off the transfers, but any like moisture, anything like that comes off of the garment onto the platen. So if you've got the quick slip on there, the second you take that off, your platen's brand new. So all you have to do is replace the quick slips, not the platens when they deteriorate.
Exactly, yeah. So there's no downtime on your machine when it comes to cleaning the bottom of it that way.
Yeah. Cool. So another great way that you can make efficiency savings is having a threadable heat press. And now this again comes back to pressure and not having unnecessary layers or elements to the garment on the platen. So the like neck marks, you'd call it, if you were to just lay a t-shirt flat down on the platen with the top and the back part of it together, you'll get a press mark where the seam hits the back of the shirt. And even if you could get all of the edges off so it's completely flat, you've still got that double layer which affects the pressure. It's just not as isolated and it's not as good. So
putting a press on a caddy or a counter caddy, so you either have one that's floor standing or one that goes on top of a worktop. Again, it just makes everything so much easier. So combining that with a quick slip and a smaller platen, it means you can just, that t-shirt just glide on and off in a couple of seconds, opposed to like 15-20 seconds. It just helps you isolate all the areas. But it also means that if you say, and I say you can't afford to go for one of the top end machines like the Air Fusions, but you can still turn and auto open, because all the Air Fusions have what we call threadability as standard. But you can always upgrade your Max or your auto open heat press by popping it onto a caddy and creating a threadable area that way as well, which is great, especially if you've got like really thick hoodies, or if you're doing something where you're going to be doing an application on the front and the back and just want to spin it around rather than having to take it on and off. Just makes every little second count that way.
Definitely.
And another one that is being really popular this year, we've had lots of questions on Instagram and Facebook about, is our laser alignment system. So this is a really big one if you have multiple people working in your business. So let's say, for instance, you own your business, but you might have 5, 10, 30, 50 people doing the application for you, and you don't have time to actually keep an eye on every single one that's being done. You might have Saturday staff or summer staff, and you want to be able to maintain accuracy and control. Have a lot of customers are, especially ones that are doing sports, where they're like, okay, I want to make sure every single football top has the A5 sponsorship area of the logo in the same spot. So if the team's lined up together, it doesn't look weird. They don't look one by the neck, one by the belly. They want to make sure exactly the same all the way across. So if you've not got a dual F Fusion, which has lasers as standard, you can just get a laser alignment system. And what it does is it's got 4 lasers on it. Put it next to your press and you shine it down onto the bottom platen and create a grid or a square. And you can manipulate them as much as you want to. And you just make a little box. So that means that whenever someone puts a t-shirt on there, then they then put the transfer or the vinyl inside the box and line it up that way. And it's going to be in the same place every single time on every single t-shirt, hoodie, sports jersey, whatever it may be, bag, who knows. But they'll all be in exactly the same place every single time. So you've got consistency of product, and that's what helps you stand out from being a good company to a great printer. So that's one that's a really big hit, and they're really easy to get started with. They don't take much. It's just a case of, because everyone gets like a guide that comes with it, so you can see common placings, but you can always draw on your own onto this cardboard guide that comes with it. It's foldable. So that's a really great way of just creating a little bit more efficiency from an accuracy point of view. But again, it's going to save you time because you've not got people measuring down from the seams and in from the sleeves every time. So they just have to literally pick up a transfer, put it on. So your actual placement time is probably gone from 20 seconds to 1 second. So again, you're going to save so much time. If you're doing lots of volume, it's a real game changer that way.
Yeah. Brilliant. Is there anything else efficiency-wise you want to cover before we wrap up?
I think that's it for today.
Okay.
We've got a video planned for YouTube in a couple of weeks' time where we're going to be doing a live demonstration of how to use all of these products as well, which I'd highly encourage everyone to keep an eye out for.
Yes.
But if you've got any questions about efficiency, or think there's something you think that you could do quicker or you wish you could do quicker, do send us a message or leave us a comment. And we can look into it, bring it up on a future episode or do a little video on it and show you just how to achieve some more efficiencies that way.
There might be a product ready to solve your issue as well, because we've only mentioned a few today. We have a lot more, so there might be something ready and waiting that we can just point you in the right direction. So definitely get in touch if you need any help. Make sure you like and subscribe the Target Transfers podcast. Thank you very much to everyone who has tuned in for the first season. We have a bonus episode coming in a week or two, so stay tuned for that. And then season 2 will be kicking off with a very exciting episode, which I'm not going to tell you about. I'm going to make you tune in and listen. But that will be coming very soon as well. So yes, like, subscribe and share our podcast, and make sure you're following us on socials to be the first to know when new episodes are released.
Thanks, Molly, and thank you everyone for listening.
Bye, guys.